listening to Final Frontier News.
From the furthest reaches of the universe to the innermost depths of the mind, this is Final Frontier News.
Suppress technology and secret potential. It's been a while since we've actually done a live Final Frontier broadcast, so it's good to be back with a live format. People really answered the call for to hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube tonight, and that was just amazing by everybody, so we really appreciate that. But this is a very interesting topic that we've sort of dove into a few times before when we talk about Nikola Tesla, and that's what we talked about on one episode. We spent most of it, I believe, primarily speaking of Nikola Tesla and some of the things that he could have done, should have done, wasn't able to do. And just one example, because a lot of people, Dave, they bring up the fact that maybe a lot of people discredit Nikola Tesla, and they say, you know, he never actually did do anything, or this was all kookiness, or a sort of a made-up conspiracy, that he never really had hard evidence that he could develop these things. But let's talk about the one thing that you can go right to, and that is, you know, that Nikola Tesla, every time you plug something into the wall now, that's Nikola Tesla. That is him. I mean, you know, what was it? Oh my goodness, who's this? Edison tried DC, right? Tried DC format, but Nikola Tesla had AC, right? And I don't know if that's I think
no, it was Nikola Tesla that had direct current.
I'm sorry, so it was reversed.
And direct current is a lot safer for people than alternating current, which is what AC stands for. Right.
Flip-flop what I said. But the bottom line of that is the direct current is what stuck. And that's something that's, you know what I mean, at the time was trying to be suppressed, I believe, by Edison, but it's probably by, you know, a lot of different people, a lot of different things, and that's a different story because we have a different episode about that. And honestly, we're not done with the Tesla stuff. We're not done with that debate. There will be more videos on that. But let's move back into suppressed technology, secret potential. I keep saying potential. It's late at night. And starting right off the bat, when I think of suppressed technology, the first thing that I think of is electric cars. Something that for sure in the early 90s we thought would blossom into the 2000s. We thought that, you know, in 2010 that there would be, most cars would be electric, or that there would be, you know, lots of electric cars at least out there that were viable. You know, by 2010 that we would be far deep into it. But we really weren't. There was propaganda against electric cars, that they were too expensive, or that they didn't work, or this or that, just countless articles putting them down. And one of the things I noticed is when you would, because I was, as a kid, I was very curious and excited to see flying cars or electric cars or whatever it is, because I always said to myself, why do we use fuels? Why do we have to dig up this, you know, why do we have to get this oil? Why do we need to rely on fuels and things like this? Why can't we develop something better? Why can't the sun power the car? Why can't electricity power the car? Why can't batteries power the car? Why do we need to go rely on this oil? It just seems barbaric. And every time I would see a scientist speak on it, they would seem so confident that they could develop these things. And then you would see these articles written about it like it was a joke. And once you get people believing something is a joke and the free market makes a decision, you know, you kind of stop the whole thing in its tracks. Very similar to beta tapes versus VHS. Beta tapes, all intents and purposes, actually, as a fact, a better quality. but they didn't work out, and VHS, takes over. So I compare it to that, but why it was suppressed, we'll get Dave in on that. But the bottom line is, the first car, if you really want to know where to start with this, if you're listening to this and you're like, where do I start on this whole electronic car? You can actually go back to the 1800s when it was possible then. People were doing that stuff then. But the biggest car that sticks out is the EV1 and General Motors. It's the biggest one. A documentary came out about it in 2003 or sometime around 2000. But they basically killed the thing. And GM is one of the biggest culprits of this. And a lot of these companies developed these things themselves and then thought that they would be put out of business by it, so they couldn't implement it. And these businesses had to buy up other people's creations in order to eliminate future competition. So with all that being said, EV1 is where to start, I believe. But let's pass it over to Devious Dave Rose, who's here with us. And what do you think about all that, Dave?
Well, there's definitely been many, many times in the past where technologies that were too efficient or too easy, as it were, where they were decided to not be utilized with the public. And for example, Nikola Tesla actually developed a vehicle that did not have a conventional motor. Back in 1931, he took what is called a Pierce Arrow, and he converted it to utilize a device that was not viewed by the public, but a few people were able to get some looks on it. It was about 3 feet in length and about 2 feet in diameter, and it trailed 2 very thick cables that were connected to the dashboard. Now, this device, because he kept it very secret, was not very known as to what components it had, but from the few individuals that looked into it, confirmed that it did not have any moving parts. This device allowed this car back in 1931 to drive a distance of 50 miles, sometimes at speeds of over 90 miles per hour, when this car, again, being limited with its era, 1930s, had a rating of only 120 miles per hour. So this little device, which was never heard of again, had the ability to provide a car with propulsion that did not rely on a fossil fuel, and essentially allowed it to be able to continue to run almost indefinitely. I mean, 50 miles doesn't sound like a lot these days, but considering that age, that era, that time, that was a big distance. Now, if you think to yourself, the same sort of effort that has gone through in developing, say, the space station that's already cost about $150 billion, you would think, okay, if they started in the late 1800s and they continued to develop this device, where would we be today in 2016? What kind of technology would we have powering our devices, our vehicles, our crafts, if we continue to dedicate the necessary interest in these sorts of technologies? And that's just one of many of Nikola Tesla's different creations that you can track down by looking at their patents and see that, again, these devices were much more efficient than what was available back in the day, or they were revolutionary, and they became suppressed for many different, usually political or economical reasons.
It's more than I thought before. When you first hear about these things being suppressed, my first instinct was always, oh, the government didn't want it, or the government this or that. And it's really just a little like kind of crazy conspiracy. That's conspiracy. When you're like, oh, just the government must not wanted to cover it up or not wanted you to have the technology. Me or you mostly.
Well, hold on a second here. Let's talk about collusion. Collusion is a form of conspiracy. Collusion essentially is working behind the scenes, not publicly, but behind the scenes, to agree on a certain predetermined outcome while publicly disavowing yourself of any sort of interaction. So, for example, if you go get gas on a corner gas mart, and you see it's, you know, a certain price, and then you look across the street and another different brand of a gas mart has gas at the exact same brand. Well, considering that there's competition, normally you would expect one to undercut the other to get those extra sales. But when you see that all the same, what does that mean? There's collusion in the background going on with these OPEC industries that essentially profit from a fossil fuel, and they decide on a price that remains the same as opposed to actually working with true capitalism and trying to lower that price. That's collusion, and that is a conspiracy.
Right. Well, that's a good point, and that's very interesting. And I think where I was getting at was I just believed it was this invisible government that did these things, but really it was more, a lot of times these decisions seem to be, a tactical corporate decision by the corporation.
They're
it's all about money.
Driven through the corporate system, through these multinational corporations.
Right. And I suppose in some of those corporations having leverage with government would conspire with the government to make sure that they work together to keep everyone's interest intact. So I suppose there you go. Now I will play you an audio clip of a narrator from our friends at Strange Mysteries who narrate through some of the electronic or electric car suppressed technology. Sound clip for you now.
The electric car. Humans have enjoyed running over squirrels and doing drive-bys in motor vehicles for more than a century now. And we've had electricity for even longer. But it's only in the last few years we've seen these two things come together in a commercially viable manner, with the release of vehicles such as the Prius, the Volt, the Leaf, and Tesla. But the very first electrically charged battery-powered car was actually built way back in 1884 by Thomas Parker. And at first, until more advanced combustion engines were developed, electric cars seemed set to dominate. So why?
Yeah, they just said you had to have 7 batteries underneath you, but hey, it worked.
Why has it taken so long? The simple answer is money. And the first volley in the war started back when electric trolley technology looked set to flourish in cities throughout North America during the 20th century, when both oil companies and auto manufacturers conspired together with federal government to create robust city bus transit systems nationwide, and at the same time convince our governments to mind-boggling budgets dedicated to expensive highway systems. In the early 90s, electric car batteries were expensive and had low mileage per charge. But when more advanced battery designs were developed, Chevron bought them up to prevent them being used.
There you go right there. That's a very interesting point. Chevron buying up that newly developed battery technology. And you see how, capitalism can work against a society who wants to prosper or become smarter, because it ends up becoming about the money. For the person who was creating them, or people or industry or corporation creating something, they couldn't help but say, well, the end game was to be successful, and these people want to give us $300 million or whatever it is, and then they just buy you out. And
but that's not necessarily capitalism. That's more corporatism, where the big multinationals are protected, and they're not doing things for competition. They're doing things for profit. Capitalism is about competition. Corporatism is about control.
Right, I got you there, and that's a great point. Control, not about successful business growth, but control. Although they go hand in hand in this case with Chevron.
That's pretty darn sneaky. The oil company
I'll go back to that again.
Electric car batteries were expensive and had low mileage per charge. But when more advanced battery designs were developed, Chevron bought them up to prevent them being used. That's pretty darn sneaky. The oil company Mobil also took out advertisements in magazines disparaging electric cars, claiming they were dangerous and would probably touch your kids when you weren't looking. But even though 3/4 of the public have consistently said they would purchase an electric car, General Motors deliberately sabotaged the 1996 EV1 vehicle and destroyed as many of its existing models as they could, falsely claiming a lack of demand from the public. At 6, a safer
Well, that was number 7 on their list there. Now, that's the one that I wanted to hear since we were on the topic of it. And very interesting stuff. A very, very well broken down video on suppressed technologies and that of the electronic car.
Electric car.
What did I say? Electronic? Electric car.
Electronic.
I'm having all kinds of problems. I'm having strokes tonight.
Electric, based on a battery of a certain charge.
There are electronics in the car, but it is
now. Here's something
car.
A lot of people don't consider when they do purchase or consider purchasing one of these vehicles is that a big portion of that cost that you're paying was reduced because the government has certain programs in place that sort of pay the car company for putting that car out. It's a subsidy, and it ends up costing people and everyone, the government, a lot more. Strangely, though, because this normally you would think a technology that's ready to go and that's profitable would not need a subsidy to be able to be sold on the market, but that's what they're doing right now with the Chevy Volts and these Priuses and such. And again, you think to yourself, they've had all this time to refine these products. Look at computers, for example, and how much they've changed even in the last 10 years. When the appropriate amount of resources are dedicated onto something, you see advancements that are light years beyond what happened the year prior, because there is that dedication of resources and technology and minds looking to that product. Again, we could have flying cars by now. No issue there. We've been seeing models and actual working products since the 60s and the 50s for flying cars. We could easily have those and probably have them extremely efficient. Again, you look at a car from the 50s in a crash test dummy type situation where you see the video and you see how the dummies are treated, and then you see a car from today and see the difference in how much more of a survivability you would have in that newer vehicle. Think about when that's applied to these other technologies. Again, you spend enough time on a particular product and dedicate enough resources to it, and you're going to get something that continues to essentially evolve light years from every prior year.
And I mean, you wonder how much we've really been held back. I mean, have we really been held back since maybe 1900 on this? Or do you think even if Tesla was allowed to do what he, was able to do what he could do, how far would that technology have gone? Without
but hold
the
on.
battery technology.
We already know, and we've discussed this earlier on a previous show, is that Tesla developed these generating towers, if you want to call them that. They go by different names, but essentially these towers were going to allow for energy to be transmitted through the air without having any dependency on any sort of resources, so 0 point free energy, and be able to charge any sort of devices that were needed, as well as to be utilized in communications overseas. When this was found out, it was immediately sort of shut down and suppressed, even though the technology had been proven to work. So this evidence exists out there if you wish to look it up. And more importantly, look at the patents. I've always said that. You have to look at the patents, because this sort of indicates that this technology is able to be created and utilized. Some people might argue, well, the patents don't prove that the technology was created. And I'll grant you that. But more often than not, you do see that when somebody creates a patent, it's because they've already proven it in reality, and they've got to secure their intellectual property. So you shouldn't discount a patent as a non-existent device, because more often than not, it's already been developed, and the individual is just ensuring that they control their intellectual property in the future.
Yeah, the patents are very interesting, and that's the problem, is you have to make your way into viewing the patterns and and just seeing where things are coming from. And I can't tell you how many times that somebody told me to look up certain patterns, and I would look at them and be like, "Wow, that's really." Yeah, it's unbelievable, and it actually gets very confusing sometimes too. And I think that's why people don't do it.
I want to speak about this for a moment. I'm sorry to apologize to interrupt again, but we're talking about suppressed technology here, and there's a technology that's already been cataloged and proven to exist, but never talked about or hardly ever. Tunneling devices that are used underneath the earth, developed by the United States Air Force, the Atomic Energy Commission, and other organizations in the United States. They use a nuclear reactor to power themselves and essentially burn through the bedrock and create a tunnel that has a very smooth finish on the outside, because the energy is essentially heating the rock up to the point where it melts, and the device allows for this to be spread over the outsides of the tunnel to create a nice smooth finish. And these have been utilized in the creation of deep underground military bases, as well as other sort of strongholds throughout the United States, as well as the rest of the world. And I wanted to hear from you, Joe, about that, if you've heard that at all, because I'm actually, while we're talking right now, looking up an image of these devices so that I can maybe have you show them here on the show.
I did not know about those. This is new to me. I was actually really excited listening to you talk about it, because yeah, that is something I haven't heard of, which is very interesting to me. And talk about journey to the center of the earth. It's unbelievable, but it coincides with things like thorium, where instead of uranium, we could use thorium. And that's another thing that we basically don't use. We could power nuclear power using thorium. We don't use it. But yeah, going back to those devices.
Well, there's that photo I just put into the Skype chat for you to put up there if you can. Now, This is the one that was developed by the United States Air Force. I don't have quick access to the other photo, but there are several models of this sort of device.
It's coming up blank for me for some. Oh, there it is. Okay, now it's coming up. That is bizarre. And so, what was the reason for this?
Nuclear-powered tunnel borer.
Now, what was the reason for this being canceled? Do you know?
No, it's not canceled. It's a repressed technology. We're talking suppressed technology. It's a technology that's not mentioned, but is still utilized by those that are aware on how it works. Again, Tesla's technology wasn't canceled or destroyed. It just went sort of underground, or it went secret, in the sense that those that were able to get a hold of this technology, this information, they were able to utilize it for their own means. And Tesla, came out without anything to his name. So,
Westinghouse what?
Westinghouse bought Tesla's patents.
Oh, Leah says Westinghouse bought the patents of Tesla.
That's one organization. The government also basically went in and just, like actual government agents, went in and stole a bunch of his papers and information. So did people that were working from Edison as well.
As far
from
as
the get-go, Tesla was a marked man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He was raped. I mean, to be honest,
he was a genius, and he came to America for the American dream, and unfortunately,
Tesla's work was raped. It's absolutely unbelievable. It almost be like a very.
We use AC current.
Yeah, we use it now, Leah. We use AC current now, but the thing is, he had it then.
Patents for $1 million to Westinghouse. I think he did all right.
Well, that's some of the stuff, but that's only some of it.
He lived to be like an old man.
He died poor. The U.S. Air Force building these things, he died without a cent. So that should tell you something. Nikola Tesla died without money.
How was he living then?
He died destitute.
He died destitute. That's Dave's word, not mine. But let me and I said this before I heard Dave say anything, so that is something I said, and I didn't know what Dave was going to say or what you were going to say, but I believe that Tesla died a poor man, and that's what I understand about him. Now moving on back to this machine and device, do you think this is what the uppers, the 1%, the elites have access to and have built underground bunkers? Because lots of people in the government have come out and said, you know, that there's something going on in certain places in Colorado and these other places, not only to bury genes and to bury, plants and cells and other things like that, but also to have sort of underground bunkers. And this could be something the elite would use.
It should be no question that this is being utilized. It's been proven that it's been utilized, and these bases that have been created throughout the United States have shown that they are equipped to allow for massive underground cities to exist. Cheyenne Mountain had undergone a recent update and rebuilding, as well as places in the far west, including Area 51 and such, near Las Vegas as well. All over the place, they've been upgrading their underground bases, and there's too much testimony and evidence of people, contractors even, that have been basically, hired to just drive in with their dump truck, pick up a bunch of dirt or rocks, and then ship it out of there. And they do that nonstop for hours and hours on end. So these bases do exist. Are they as nefarious as some people think? Well, that is truly the question.
Filthy Banana says something interesting that incites something in me. He says underground shelters for nuclear fallout, fully functioning cities, no different than the ones discovered as ancient history repeating. But the funniest thing about this, the very ironic thing about this, is you used a nuclear-powered device to drill holes to live in case of nuclear fallout. It's kind of funny.
Many reports indicate that the underground nuclear tests that were held in the desert in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, under the peaceful nuclear weapons program, were specifically for creating areas where they could build bases. Essentially, you're hollowing out a huge area utilizing a nuclear explosion, and it vaporizes a big portion of that rock.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a good chance that this has been utilized. I mean, the Russians have publicly admitted that they've utilized this to create lakes. And under this, again, the same program, these are international programs that are recognized and agreed upon. And they've got treaties for this, but they've created lakes and rivers and dams and such utilizing nuclear weapons. So it's not that far out to consider that these tests could also allow for the creation of underground bases.
Not to pull us into politics too much, but to look at the people like George Soros and some of these rich millionaires, billionaires who are manipulating the system. You look at the things that have come out in WikiLeaks. Never mind what Hillary Clinton has been saying in WikiLeaks and what she's done in emails and the bad things that she's done. Never mind what Donald Trump does out in front of everybody on the camera. Never mind what Hillary does behind the scenes. Just look at some of the things that are in WikiLeaks that don't have to do with necessarily directly with Hillary. Look at the things that they suggest are going on, and it is very frightening, and it is very clear, that there is something. Dave, I feel something big is happening soon. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. People claim that, there's a Planet X and that's going to hit us and things like that. Other people claim it's a nuclear war that could happen based on what, us provoking. I watched a video with Putin the other day talking about America, and he said, that's what they do over there right now. Things are high tension because of the election. He says they're using it for the election. He goes, I'm hoping that once this election is over, that things will go back to normal between the relations of Russia and America. And that's what Putin said the other day. And I watched the press conference, and it was unbelievable to hear him speak like that. Not that behind the scenes he doesn't speak a different way. But you wonder who's involved in this elite game. Who knows about these things, about the contacts with potential, aliens, with potential technology that we don't know about, with something that could be happening that maybe people are aware of in space that we're not aware of. I just feel, and I don't know what it is, that something big is happening. Why else would there be such a panic almost with some of these people to create a global world, or to connect everything more globally? Maybe it's, I don't see where it's going, and I don't quite understand it yet. And why is there such a pushback? Is it all about money, or is there something else, beyond the money? And if it's all about money, why aren't we building rockets to launch into space to mine, space rock? Why aren't we mining the moon? Why aren't we mining drive-by space rock? Why aren't we landing on those rocks? Some other people who really dive down the rabbit hole believe the aliens, believe the Zetas and things like that are blowing up our rockets because they don't want us to use these things for bad. They don't want us to use it in war, so they're blowing up our SpaceX. They're messing with SpaceX, so SpaceX can't succeed with what they want to do. They're messing with the NASA. That's why NASA just is completely almost given up, it seems, because they've been warned or they can't get to the moon. All these things. That's going really far down the trail that we don't really have proof of. But why, with future technologies, we really should be going forward with all these things. Are we in a stifling right now of suppressed technology as far as space goes? Because we made a huge jump to go to the moon. But the other argument could be that we are in a big jump to go to Mars and robotics, and that we're actually coming up with alternative ways to travel to space, whereas the old way of just putting an actual human on the moon, it's just that they've changed philosophies. And yes, we will take phone calls at 339-226-6610. We will take your calls if you want to call in, have any questions or opinions or technology on the mind. But Dave, what do you think about that?
There again is a lot that you did cover.
I threw a lot of things at you. I know that, yeah. But what do you think about future technologies in space? Do you think the space program's been altered? I guess is what I'm really trying to get at.
Well, if you again follow the money, most importantly, and you also look at the evidence, you'll see that, in fact, there is suppressed technology in the U.S. space industry. And what I mean by this is that, for one, there really isn't one space program. There's at least two. You have what the public sees through NASA, which is basically a PR firm, but it's also officially connected to the Defense Department. So it's not a total civilian operation, it is a military one. So that is what the public sees. And then you have the secret space program, which has already been confirmed by many individuals, people like Gary McKinnon, who hacked into the defense system, which apparently was very easy to do, got actual records that showed that there were what were called off-world personnel, and it was off-world personnel transfer document that he pulled up, which was one of the ones that he shared, and he got attacked by the American legal establishment. And
he said he made it up.
They tried to extradite him to the States for charges, and Britain eventually said, no, we're not going to let you do that. But he saw actual evidence of what's called a secret space program, and it's been defined in several different worlds, but we're going to use secret space program for the conversation here. And he saw the name Solar Warden, which referred to apparently a fleet of secret ships that
Wow.
were essentially going through the solar system and were created and were run by humans. So this is the information that he brought out.
Wow.
It was verified by many different insiders and individuals that worked in the defense industries.
Yeah.
And again, this you might those that are listening right now might find this strange, odd, even crazy. But you just have to go out and look for this information, and you'll find not just one source, but multiple different sources that again cite this information, provide very good proper references. And again, if you're willing to put in the time to read, you will find this information out. And we're only presenting it here as we find it. There's no slant, there's no political agenda here. We're just trying to just put out what we find and explore the different mysteries of the world and the universe that we live in. So as strange as it might sound, it again is one of these different possibilities that might exist. So we should consider everything fairly if we want to be fair with ourselves.
That's a great point. It's really it's about speculation and just putting every possibility out there. You can't make a educated decision or educated guess or educated theory or even educate yourself without all the possibilities on the table. And so we don't necessarily believe everything. We don't necessarily want to curve you anywhere. We just want to mention everything and then start trying to make a decision or piece it together from there, I suppose. Not even make a decision yet, but we're just trying to piece these put the puzzle pieces together and figure out what could be going on here. And it is very interesting, and it is interesting that we, like you said, we haven't been more I just wonder so much what it would be like if every avenue if it was all about advancing the technology, if it was just about making a better world, better technology, and advancing as humans. If it was about that,
let's consider that possibility. If we were able to get free energy machines at 1900s, for example,
which Tesla wanted to give everyone free energy machines. That's why he was. By the way, that's why people freaked out on him. I believe.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because again, people from J.P. Morgan and other potential investors into these tower generators that I spoke of previously said to Tesla, well, if we can't quantify, if we can't figure out exactly how much we're giving out so that we can calculate a cost per hour to that, well, then we can't make money off that. So we won't allow for it.
Right.
Again, it's all about profit. It's all about making money. And again, follow the information and you'll find out from, again, all the different research that I've done that false scarcity, as what it's called, is what propels gas prices to go so high. You have an organization called OPEC, which is basically our cartel that controls the production of oil and the cost. And they say, okay, well, there's only a certain amount of oil left. So it's, supply equals demand, and that adjusts and stuff. So it goes high. And then magically more gas is, more petroleum is found. And, okay, well, we're going to put out more gas, so it's going to lower the price a little bit. But it's never like where it jumps huge down. But they always seem to find more oil and stuff. So you start to question, okay, well, you're telling me that it's scarce, that this resource is one of these like limited resources.
It's almost like gold.
That it's scarce and that it's going to run out. But you keep finding more, and you keep allowing that to increase the price.
Right.
So when you take a look at all these different geological reports and stuff, oil is much more abundant on this planet than people might make it out to be. So not only should it be a lot cheaper in regards to the amount of supply that there is available, but that the companies themselves, the oil companies, are actually the ones that are coming out and basically lying about how much oil is available and allowing that to make money, to boost profits.
Would you be surprised that in the future at some point that the scientists were able to create a faulty oil or a faulty gas or a faulty is not the right word. The right word would be like a mock gas. And they could develop this. They could create this. They could create as much as they wanted almost. And if they were able to develop it, you know what I mean? And they would maybe never tell you. They would appear to be mining oil and making for gasoline. And in fact, it was a farce. They were creating it. They'd learned how to engineer it. And through doing that, they drove the price up a little bit and told us all that it was so scarce and you couldn't get it. Would that be something that would ever happen? I mean, I feel like
No, I don't see that happening. I would see that another false scarcity resource would be put in its place and utilized as the next thing that we should worry about. Again, thorium keeps being talked about like this great savior, and if you start to look into it, it's not as good as they talk about, and it seems to be more of a pipe dream, just like this helium-3 that they talk about mining from the moon.
Well, thorium was
theory,
held back
that sounds
too, though.
great, but in reality, there is no fusion reactor on the planet that can essentially process helium-3.
Right. But what about thorium? I mean, thorium I always thought was something that should have been used, but because they couldn't weaponize
it's all theory, though. Nobody's been able to actually create a generator with thorium that was essentially able to live up to the high capacity standards that would be necessary to power cities and such. You can create this on a very small scale, but if you can't create it, with an actual full scale reactor, well, then the technology isn't there.
Yeah, I believed it was more powerful. At least, even if it's not as powerful, I guess the issue is because I thought it was more long-lasting. Whether it's powerful enough, I don't know, but I thought thorium would last 1,000 years, which would be more.
Again, in theory, it might sound great, but if you can't get that working operationally in real life, then, again, it all goes out the window.
Well, again, I believed that it was more controllable, and the problem was that they couldn't weaponize it. I always thought that because they couldn't weaponize thorium, that they were just like they weren't interested in it because they couldn't weaponize it. But it's more abundant than uranium, isn't it?
Well, that remains to be determined. Some countries haven't yet, fully looked into whether or not these metals essentially exist in their environment. Like Afghanistan has never really been properly mined. That's why there's always been a huge interest, and wars are great for being able to get people in to, check out the resources of a country to exploit. But Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, all these places have these metals that are quite sought after for lithium batteries, for potentially thorium, some uranium, copper, cadmium, platinum. A lot of these different materials are available in these countries that have yet to be fully mapped out.
We didn't get a phone call yet, but on Final Frontier News, people are much more shy on this show. But I did get a tweet from Nick Lawrence, who brought up the Kesh reactor. Is it Kesh reactor? I haven't heard of that. He wanted to know what you knew about it, if you did know about it. And he sent me a photo comparing the closed ecological system of Earth to the closed ecological system of the Kesh reactor.
Now, it's very interesting that Chris Lawrence brings this up. Thank you for doing so. Now, I'm not particularly familiar with this, but it's very similar to what I've actually researched. I can't remember the author's name, Scott Adams, I believe, but there's a few individuals that essentially postulate what this graphic is showing here is that the Earth itself is sort of under a self-sustaining process.
Yeah.
It is sort of a living organism, but it's also growing. So the Earth, like all planets apparently under this theory, started a certain size, but because there's this sort of fusion reaction going on in the core, it's actually allowing the planet to grow. So continental drift is not the actual continents that are floating and that just move, but apparently it's the planet itself that's just growing like a balloon, and that these continents are just drifting. Like they look like they're drifting from the outside, but really what they're doing is they're just moving apart as the planet grows bigger. So this is I'm going to have to look into this. It's very, very interesting that they're referring to this as the Kesh reactor. But it does fit into a lot of the different theories that I've read into, which refer to the Earth itself as being a sort of biological entity that in fact has all these different sort of microcosm and macrocosm systems that are working around it, and that it in fact is a growing thing.
That is very interesting. In fact, that could be a whole show really speaking about the Earth and the core, and is the Earth expanding and all those things. So we'll keep that on point for next time. Dave, is there anything you want to bring up again or close on here if we got to get out of here? Is there...
Well, we've only
touched
these
the
sorts of
tip
shows.
of the iceberg.
We've only just touched the surface, and again, there is an iceberg below us of what we could talk. But we will be getting into a lot of very, very deep, very long episodes in the near future. I, for one, have a few episodes that are planned that will be coming out on Final Frontier News that I'm sure that the audience will be greatly interested in. And if you have any ideas on any topics that you'd like me to go into great detail, I am looking to make episodes that are at least an hour in length, but go very deep in details, also providing sources and citing evidence and other information that will give you a good, concise idea as to what we're dealing with. So I'm very much looking forward to this.
Well, I had a good time tonight, and I hope you guys had a good time tonight too. We're going to have on-demand paid-for content, as you guys know, to keep the channel alive and to fund us. We will always have our free shows or two weekly on Final Frontier News now going forward, but we'll also have many on-demand pay-for content in video form that will be available, or video that will be, podcasting, actually. So it'll be just like we do, but you guys know that that's how we're going to do it. So you don't have to subscribe to anything. You'll get the free videos, but there'll be paid-for videos that we put up as well. And if you think that they're interesting enough, you can purchase them right here on the YouTube channel. We thank you for listening. Suppressed Technologies, it's the tip of the iceberg, like we said a million times. So much more that we can speak of on this, and we can definitely go back into the old topics and go in depth into those as well, which is something we're going to do more often also. It's endless, and it's, Final Frontier, but it's really infinite. I love the infinity logo because it's just things are infinite. I think we believe that here. But yeah, look for this. Jesse will probably be with us again soon. Me and Dave, and we're going to get guests on the show. And maybe we'll add, if people want to be a part of it, call up, start speaking, and you never know. You may end up on here with something yourself. This was Final Frontier News, guys. Have a good night. And if you guys have topics you want to hear about, tweet us, email us, and message us, and leave comments below the video. That's mostly important. Leave the comment below the video. We'll see it. And eventually we'll get to it.
From the furthest reaches of the universe to the innermost depths of the mind, this is Final Frontier News.